Jalen Duren was one of this season's biggest breakout players. The young big with promising offensive potential, shot up in scoring, and more importantly, completely transformed as a defender. It's funny, the NBA community can have such a short-term memory. I don't even know how many people remember that Duren was a defensive liability, and that was a serious question mark surrounding his development. He's always been a great rebounder, and that's good for ending possessions, but he's had bad positioning, was bad at defending pick and rolls, lost players off ball or in rotation. You basically had to stick him at the rim or he'd be lost. But he's become a much higher IQ defender, more engaged, better footwork in space, and he's really helped make Detroit's defense not just elite, but special. The Pistons' relative defensive rating of -6.1 this season is the second best in their franchise's history, behind just the 04 team, and is in the same company as some of the late 60s and early 70s Celtics teams and some of the best Knicks teams of the 70s and 90s. Realistically, Asar Thompson deserves the lion's share of credit for being one of the most monstrously disruptive defenders I've ever seen, and one of the few perimeter defenders whose impact legitimately rivals and surpasses some rim protectors. But back to Duren, the reason I bring up his growth as a defender is I don't want to undercut him with the rest of what I'm going to be saying, but for how high some people got on him during the regular season, these playoffs have been a reality check. And the reason I call them a reality check instead of just a playoff drop or underperformance is because I think people got a little too high on Duren as this two-way star. Ultimately, Duren's offense isn't very versatile. He doesn't have great hands, can't create for himself, isn't a great playmaker out of the short roll, and really relies on the power element of his game to impose his will. And even though Duren's scoring average shot up this season, his touch really only improved in the short mid-range and was actually slightly worse around the rim than last season. But in back-to-back series during these playoffs, Duren was almost completely shut out. Teams could load up the paint, and he wasn't skilled enough to operate through the traffic. Against the Orlando Magic, Wendell Carter Jr. guarded Duren incredibly, even though he's not as good of a player, because he has the size and strength to match up. And against the Cavaliers, generally elite defensive bigs in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen kept him in check and denied the Pistons' attempts to directly feed him the ball. And on defense, the Cavs made Duren regress into a lot of his old tendencies by spreading out the floor and with all their ball movement. Not to mention, being kept off the glass plummets his impact. And not that on-off splits tell the whole story, but holy shit, the Pistons' defense has been almost 15 points worse with Duren on the floor during the postseason. Now this has been what I think is ultimately still a pretty successful season and playoff run for the Pistons, considering the lack of their overall offensive talent. But now they face a very precarious question as far as their star big man's future with the team. Duren is eligible for a Supermax extension this offseason, and pending an All-NBA team selection, that contract could be as big as 5 years, $287 million. That would be an average of almost $60 million a year and close to 35% of the Pistons' salary cap. That's a tremendous amount of money to tie up in a player that showed so little during this playoff run. Even when we're talking about top 10 players, Supermax has just put teams in a bind as far as roster construction goes. If Cade and Duren make up 2/3 of the salary, that's going to make it really hard to go out and get other big-time talent. And look, Jalen Duren is 22, it would be insane to think he's fully done developing, and I also think he's better than what he showed in the playoffs. I can't speak for what's going on in a player's mind, but he seemed pretty rattled early into this postseason and never really regained his confidence. In Game 6 versus the Cavs, when Duren finally had a good game, some of the only differences was him being more aggressive in attacking the basket and having a presence on the glass, and even that made him significantly more impactful. But if you're the Pistons, you can't get this extension wrong. If you give him that full Supermax and he doesn't seriously level up his offense or improve his basketball IQ and ability to make adjustments, that could legitimately close Detroit's current window for title contention. And I know this sounds dramatic, but if we look 3 to 4 years down the line and Duren's making $60 million a year while more or less being the same player, and the Pistons can't fill out the roster to the extent they need to, that's the kind of scenario in which your disgruntled superstar asks out. So the question remains, how much do they extend Duren for? Realistically, he was playing like a $10 to $15 million player. B-ball Paul Reed is getting paid $5.5 million and was significantly more impactful than Duren in several games of the Cavs series. But taking into account the regular season he had, the fact that he's so young, and I mean, he's Detroit's guy after all, they're obviously going to pay him more than some dude on the internet thinks, I think a fair number on that contract would be somewhere in the $35 to $40 million range. If that still sounds like a lot, you have to keep in mind the ever-increasing salary caps due to media deals, and that's just how much stars get paid nowadays, even the second and third tier ones. Where things get tricky is if the Pistons go past $50 million, because at that point, Duren has to improve by leaps and bounds to make it worth it, and there's just too much rigidity in the way he plays and processes the game for me to feel 100% like he's gonna get there. Detroit can offer Duren more than any team in the league, but you also can't rule out the possibility that the Pistons offer him lower than the max, and some team desperate for a center with the cap space clear swoops in and offers him as much as they can. And maybe Duren feels disrespected by Detroit's offer, and the Pistons lose out on him entirely. All these things have to be factored in, and the decision is tough. I don't envy the position the Pistons are in. That being said, it could end up being a really lucky thing for them that Duren's weaknesses were so blatantly on display this postseason that it saved them from unquestioningly handing him almost $300 million. While I'm not sure if Duren can be Detroit's championship level anchor of the future, they have already experienced so much success with him being undoubtedly a huge contributor to that, and again, he's so young, it can really only go up from here. Alright, that's going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leaving a like would be super helpful and much appreciated. Let me know how much you think Duren is worth right now and how much you would be willing to offer him going forward. Check me out on TikTok. I post every day, multiple times a day. I also post a lot on Twitter and write on Substack and Medium. I'm really trying to grow, so the engagement means everything. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and see you in the next one.